Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is Spellhaven, my name is Jaren, and you are watching D&D Behind the Scenes, a series where you can follow along with me as I prepare to run a session of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Specifically, I am running Spelljammer Academy, and then followed up shortly with the Light of Xerxes official published adventure. So, these videos are probably going to be released about a week offset. Today is the 12th of February, and to give myself time to edit this, will probably come out in about a week on that Sunday before I prep for my next session. So to recap where we left off with our first session, characters ran through the first bit of the Spelljammer Academy adventure. Let's take a look at that. I actually have a link in my notes here if I go back, I believe. But we did everything, pretty much everything on the task list here. Here we go. I just wanted to link up really quickly with this to kind of go through what we went through. So players went through all of the academy tasks. They did all the stuff where they get to meet people, go through their orientation tasks, go about the different little skill check roleplay things. And then we're tasked with bringing this package to Mert the Merciless. And it was there we left off with the players hearing this scratching and clawing noise coming from the inside of the crate. And just before they were right there to deliver it inside Mert's room, decided to take a peek and see what was in there. And it was then that the Neogi hatchlings all kind of poured out of this crate. And that's where we left off. So today we pick up with the start of that combat, wrapping up the very tail end of what is officially the first chapter of Spelljammer Academy. We had some interesting NPC interaction in that session. It was a lot of fun. They met their bunkmate, Vina Nightguard, and her companion, TPK-99. This little automaton who follows her around to protect her, and had lots of fun. I think it was a good introduction to the setting. Tonight we're getting a little bit more spacey, I guess. We're getting more into some actual spell jamming navigation. But we begin today with the fight. So getting back to my notes here, I'm using Notion to keep track of my notes, and I'm following loosely the format of the lazy spelljammer, the lazy dungeon master. For D&D prep, it kind of follows along that format. There's some things that I don't necessarily do or do according to the book. I think whatever you find, whatever works for you is good enough. Whatever system you want to use. As long as it's serving you, then keep doing it. So characters for today, we have Ash Skylance, who is a female astral elf bard, who is kind of here for the story part of it. And she's kind of a flirt with everybody. It's really amusing. She's kind of the persona of Haley Williams from Paramore. At least that's what the player told me. That's kind of what they're basing it on. We have Private First Class Archibald Saxton Veer Tunstall. I'm butchering that last name. Thanks to my brother for coming up with this ridiculously complicated name. Who is a male GIF artificer, and I believe is going what is the kind? I always forget the name of this subclass. The Alchemist, I think, is what it's called. The one that you can create potions and stuff. But they are a GIF artificer. Gonna be pretty interesting. I'm excited to see what happens with their character. We have Tess Shelby, who is a female Shadarkai monk. Has taken the Spelljammer, the Wild Space Traveler, whatever that background from Spelljammer is called. I think it's probably here in the on the character sheet. But what I was getting at was this character has spent some time in space. Wild Spacer, it might be what the background's called. They spent some time in space. They have some connection to an entity, a deity known as Celestian. And in this experience, in this moment, we're able to catch a glimpse of the knowledge of a god, basically, and saw an entire timeline of events, including why her clan in the Shadowfell was disbanded. There was something that was trying to suck power from an entire realm, much the same way that later on we're going to see in Light of Xerxes, a star system, a star is trying to sap energy from planets. maybe something similar was happening to a certain particular spot in the Shadowfell, and that's why their clan had to leave, or there was some violent explosion and sent their clan into space. But in connecting with this god Celestian and getting a glimpse of what a god knows, they get to see everything kind of all at once in one sudden instant of possible understanding. So not only did they see what happened in the past, they see a lot of the future, including not when or how, but they know they die in a satisfactory kind of a way. Kind of spooked the player a little bit. They were like, "Are you planning my character's death already?" In my mind, I'm just thinking, I'm not planning it. I'm just like throwing out some options. I'm like reverse seeding some things. I don't know. Maybe it's gonna happen that way. Maybe not. Lastly, we have Tatam, who is a male plasmoid cleric, going to be a peace cleric, and can do all the cool things that plasmoids can do, like squeeze through cracks, all that fun stuff, and create weird appendages coming out the side of their body, all sorts of fun stuff. As I mentioned, our start this time begins with combat, with rolling initiative. So right off the bat, we're kicking it into high gear as these Neogi, whatever you want to say, hatchlings come pouring out of this crate. For my own preparation, I have written down in my monsters section of my notes, real quick cliff notes as to how the monsters work. I don't keep track of challenge rating because I think it's kind of a silly way to track encounter balance. I kind of have an idea of what's going to be an appropriate encounter, at least for these lower levels. It's not terribly difficult to go, well, they probably shouldn't fight a dragon. They probably should be fighting, ghouls and Neogi hatchlings, for example, challenge rating 1/4 and 1/2 and 1. And I think after tonight's session, the level to 2. I'm doing it also I'm doing leveling a little differently than what the source material says to do. But I've written myself some cliff notes here. I've also linked to the D&D Beyond page for this stat block in case in the moment I prefer to do it this way. That way it gives me some options. I can come to this and look at it. I have the picture if I need it. I already posted this in our Discord, so this should be okay. I don't think I'll need the picture again. And I really don't need this backstory on Neogis. What really is important is what's their AC, how many hit points do they have, how much movement do they have, do they have any special resistances, and what is their 2-hit and damage. So that's kind of why I wrote these short notes for myself here. You go, oh, AC 11, hit point 7, they can do this for movement, and then here is what they do for their attack. Now, what I should also write in here, and I could probably just do that right now, is what their initiative is going to be. I think the way I'm going to do this, because we have 8 of these things, I'm not going to run 8 different initiative orders. What I probably will do is group them into 2 different groups, a group of, each group of 4. So let's go ahead and do that now. And their dex bonus is +1. They probably have proficiency bonus +2. So we need to roll a +3 for initiative. So let's go ahead and do that in roll 20 with the dice tool. D20 +3 for the first one, 22 for one group, and a 13 for the second group. So let's mark that in the notes. I'll put that. Let's put that at the bottom of the notes. Init group 1, 22. Init group 2 was a 13. Cool. Let's go back up. So that is our start. Our first scene, if you will, is this encounter with the Neogi hatchlings. We then continue on to what is basically the second chapter of Spelljammer Academy. The way that this works, what's supposed to happen here, it's preparation for doing a lot of stuff. They have this time where they can chat with some other students at the academy. They get to meet this NPC named not Mert the Merciless, Micken Haverstance. Too many M names. And this other GIF, Petty Officer Ryback, which I think would be an interesting interaction to see since we have a GIF in the party. So they get to meet these 2. We then have their second task for this part of the academy, which is a much longer set of sort of similarly, I guess instead of in contrast to the first chapter where they're doing all these individual things and possibly doing them in different groups. Here, they all have to go to the simulation chamber. They're all being crew on a spelljamming ship in the simulation. There is no group splitting up. They're all doing the same basic thing. By the way, I wanted to say a suggestion that I got for running the first chapter, and I definitely recommend this if you're going to run Spelljammer Academy, is instead of asking the players what they want to do, what order they want to do those orientation tasks, what I would say, because I might have this as a handout here. They've got these tasks in the first chapter. They have to do all these things, and it kind of takes them around to different floors of Spelljammer Academy. Instead of saying which one of these, how do you want to do these, and then players can kind of make their own groups and do them in different orders or do them, separately. I would just have everybody say, like, let's do a montage and say, we're going to have you all do each one of these right now at the same time. You can do them in whatever order you want, but we're going to actually role play it all out and roll the dice all at the same time. That would have saved me a lot of time in the session and a lot of explanation as to what was going on if we would have just, done them all at the same time. And it would have avoided me having to address two players and then the two players over here, and then let's cut back and see what they're doing. So big recommendation to do it that way. So back here, the way that today's is supposed to work, they get to meet these NPCs. We then enter into the main chunk, which is they enter into the simulation chamber and they have to retrieve this logbook from a crashed ship that is somewhere near the planet. I think it's Koliar. And if we go to the realm space map, I think this is from one of the it's in one of the Spelljammer supplements. This isn't part of Spelljammer Academy. I don't remember if it's in the adventure or if it's in the Astral Adventurer's Guide, but basically we are starting from Toril and we have to use the simulation to retrieve a logbook from a ship near Koliar. And going by this little chart here, this little image, if Toril is there's 2 days travel from the sun, Koliar is 1 day. That means it's roughly 1 day of travel, of Spelljammer travel, which, probably a lot faster than 1 day. We're not gonna role play an entire day's worth in the session, and also we're not doing any sort of weird, actual orbital physics or anything like that. We're gonna assume that it's basically a straight shot. Or we can have them role play out how you're actually going to navigate. But they retrieve the thing. There's some checks that they do along the way. On the way back, they encounter these Githyanki pirates, and the simulation ends there as the chambers, as it turns out, have been sabotaged. And we get to sort of end on that cliffhanger going into the third chapter. So getting into the details of it, looking at the scenes here, the objective for this whole thing, as I mentioned, travel to the outskirts of Koliar, retrieve this logbook from a crashed ship, and return safely. And Bosun Tardo emphasizes, do it safely, not necessarily quick. And we'll be sure to point out to the characters, you will be graded on this, so please try to be attentive to how you're handling it. So we have 3 different skill challenges. One is plotting the course, again, where we get to ask the characters, how exactly are you doing this? And we have them roll based on what they want to do. The second part of the challenge, and we can actually see this. I think this is it's in the Journey Through Wild Space section. Plotting the course. Challenge number 2 is this electrical storm, where they encounter this whole school of giant space eels swimming around the ship and discharging these bolts of lightning as they zip on by. So they then have to make some checks to see whether or not the ship is able to maneuver out of the way and not take any damage, all that stuff. The last one is the asteroid cluster, where they encounter this asteroid belt and have to maneuver the ship and see if the ship gets out of the way or takes damage, which will be relevant once we get into the ship combat later in this session. Now, one interesting thing here that I wanted to do is I thought, because I remember reading through this in the Monstrous Menagerie, at least I was inspired by the picture, I will say. my thought is, what if this asteroid, there was like a really big one and it was secretly just a dead Kindori, and it had all these smaller asteroids floating by. I thought that would be really cool. And if we go to, um, I found a neat way to pull up that picture in Roll20. We have to go to, not my own token page, but down to, it's the token page made by the adventure, made by the module in Roll20. Here it is, token page. And this will give you all of the monsters, all the things in Spelljammer in Light of Xerxes, including our good friend, the Kindori, down here. Now, what I discovered with this particular module, I don't think they did this in Rime of the Frost Maiden, so it must be something new they're doing with these newer modules. If you click on this, I have these this window that pops up and has all this stuff already programmed into the token. And if you look at this and go, well, what does this all mean? You click on it, you can see that something popped up in the chat, and it tells me that the Kindori have this this ability called Blinding Eyes. Which, what is it? It's recharge 6. You see R6, and it tells you it emits a bright light in a 120-foot cone. Each creature in the cone must make a save. All that stuff. And same thing if I wanted to say, well, what is tail? That's actually an attack here, and it actually will roll it for me, and it'll tell me what it's actually doing here. And same thing for unusual nature. It'll tell me what unusual nature does. If I wanted to look at the stat block itself, I could hold down Alt and double click on the token, and it'll pull up all this menu here. I can then go to bio and info. This tells me all the stuff about Kindori, including, this is kind of where I'm pulling this from, the bones of it and cartilage of a dead Kindori do not deteriorate. A Kindori's skeleton can be transformed into a spelljamming ship by placing a helm inside of it. And if we look at the picture, this is kind of where I'm getting this. This is so cool, and I really want to show this to players. That this thing that looks like a gigantic asteroid is actually a Kindori that has all these smaller asteroids around it. That would be super cool. And also later in Light of Xerxes, there's a chance they actually encounter one of these things. So I think secretly I just want to show off that artwork. But if you wanted to just verify that all this stuff is there, just for example, let's click on Megapede, and I'll show you. If I go to D&D Beyond and look up Megapede, this will have all the same stuff. Here we've got multi-attack, bite, life drain, psychic bomb. We go back to Roll20. We got life drain, multi-attack, psychic bomb. It tells you all the stuff. So they've gone ahead and programmed all this clickable stuff into the token. Saves you a ton of time, and I'm really glad that D&D Beyond, or sorry, that Roll20 is doing this. It's amazing. So, getting back to the notes, this is what I wanted to do. This is why I was coming here, is to show you how to access the artwork. If you just double click the token, it'll bring up all the token settings. What you need to do is hold down Alt, double click on it. Now it'll bring you up all these additional menus. You can go to the character sheet if you want to see it, and you'll see that it's exactly the same as D&D Beyond or in your Monstrous Menagerie. And you can click on bio and info. Now I can pull up this handout and show it to all the players. So that's already in the module if you do happen to purchase modules on Roll20. Back to my notes. Let's go back. Following all this stuff, assuming they retrieve this logbook, there's some more skill checks that you can do, and you kind of say like, oh, you see this wreckage, and you can see just visibly that there is still a pocket of air surrounding the ship, and you can kind of reason out that getting close, maybe getting in next to the ship inside the air, the gravity bubble, might disturb the ship. You're going to have to figure out some creative ways to actually retrieve the logbook without sending the parts all flying. So there's going to be some cool skill checks involved in there as well. Assuming they make it out, they are sort of ambushed by this Githyanki ship. The players themselves are piloting a hammerhead ship, and the Githyanki are on a squid ship. The book does give you the stats for that. I did also grab visuals for the squid ship and hammerhead ship. These were also from a place that I referenced before, that being Crit Hit Brit. Thank you to Crit Hit Brit. These images, these maps are amazing. This looks fantastic. because what do we have on in the Spelljammer source material? Are these other things just to compare? I think, did I get a Hammerhead ship map? I did. No, this is from the book. Maybe I didn't get one from Crit Hit Brit, but yeah, just to show you like a difference in between, I guess the image quality. I am gonna end up using this probably, but you can see these are not full color. These are like hand drawn basically, and they're okay. They'll work just fine. But a nice full color image would have been better. So we have this encounter. I do have a map, and I believe this was actually included in the Roll20 module because once I loaded this up, it had all of the tokens already on here. All the ship tokens were here. I took them off already because I didn't want that clouding up my visibility. But I have the Githyanki ship, the squid ship, and I also have the player character ship, the hammerhead ship. And I have the source material gives you handouts as to, here's basically the AC, the hit points, all this stuff. It gives you stat blocks that you can hand out to players. You could print this out and give this to players. It's kind of a quick write-up as to how it works, the fact that you have these weapons that you can use. I am also kind of using a little bit of the Wildjammer supplement. It's a fan-based supplement to basically give you some actual rules behind combat ship movement, helms, add-ons, all that sort of stuff. But I have this image. This is what I'm really using this for today, to describe and show how ship movement works. If we read through the Spelljammer source material for 5th edition, it doesn't really give you anything, and it seems like it really encourages docking and boarding another ship and just having regular D&D combat. And my thought is, like, why are we doing Spelljammer if we're not trying to fight with ships in space? That's part of the cool part, I think. So we have some additional rules and descriptions of how movement could possibly work. And I'm pulling this from the Wildjammer supplement. By the way, this is for free, so I don't feel weird about using it on a video. Just give me a second to bring it over here. Come on. And so we have these different areas of movement. Now, to explain this really quickly, each one of these represents how much maneuverability a ship has. And if we read through this entire supplement, there's rules for all different kinds of ships. The kind they're dealing with today have 90 degrees worth of movement. So maneuvering your ship, you can move it in any of the squares here that are within your movement maneuverability. So a ship can, our ships are 90 degree movement. So assuming we're starting here, they can go anywhere within this second degree of lightness for their turn. Assuming we've, gone through the grid and calculated how many squares is how many feet, all that sort of stuff. But that's how that works. That's how we're going to rule it today anyways, and give players an opportunity to actually fight with ships in space, because that's kind of what we're doing. That's kind of why we're doing Spelljammer. So, this is the wrong page. I have too many windows open. This is what happens when you're prepping for D&D, is 7,000 tabs. So following that encounter, which ends, we have some conditions for the encounter ending, which happens to be, if the enemy ship is reduced to 100 hit points or fewer, it will retreat. The enemy takes 2 critical hits, causing it to retreat. The character's ship moves more than 100 feet away from the enemy ship, at which point the enemy kind of gets bored of pursuing and breaks off. Which, by the way, the PCs, the character's ship, does have slightly more speed, so they could reasonably go, you know what, we got what we're here for, let's just get out of here and book it, and eventually they will lose their pursuers. Or character ship is reduced to 0 hit points and they fail the training and the simulation ends. How it ends is with the simulation just kind of slowing to a halt, and you hear this strange explosion and crackling of electrical energy. As it turns out, the Spelljammer Academy simulation chamber has in fact been sabotaged. It causes the other ship, including the character's ship, to malfunction, and you have to roll for damage saves and all that sort of stuff, which could theoretically knock out a character because we haven't leveled up yet. Maybe I'll roll this as 2d8 instead of 3d8 because I think 3 could one-shot any of the characters. But they get to see that, yeah, there was some sabotage here. There's this piece of metal that has been inserted into each one of the simulation chambers and caused it to error or mess up. These pieces of metal have these strange sigils on them, which Bosun Tardo recognizes as belonging to a somebody named Vokath. Characters won't get to know who that is yet, but it's someone named Vokath who kind of has it out for Bosun Tardo, maybe even Spelljammer Academy. And that is kind of where this ends. And then characters will level up. It says here to 3rd level. Again, my big complaint about 5th edition is they really turbocharge you up to 5th level as fast as possible, and it feels a little weird, especially because we've only played one actual session. So at the end of the 2nd session, they're basically getting to 3rd level, and it feels a little bit weird. So that basically does it for the scenes, kind of how the session is supposed to play out. So some things they could find out. Again, if you watched the last episode, we're at Spelljammer Academy, so there's not a ton of secrets for characters to find out. We're not really in that stage of the campaign yet. It's really them learning about how Spelljammer setting works, how ship movement works, how combat works, all that sort of stuff. Just getting to know what's at the Academy. Some secrets they could find out here, though, is surrounding this mysterious sabotage. One other thing that I need to write in here, there have been a series of other burglaries reported in various areas of Spelljammer Academy. See signage, which is from chapter 1, which I forgot to do. The explosion in the simulation chamber, as I mentioned, was caused by this piece of metal jammed into each simulation chamber, which belongs to Vokath or associated with Vokath. I don't think they're going to have a chance to discover this in this session. There is a chance, though, it's information that's floating out there, that Micken was paid off by a Mercane, and it happens to be Vokath, to provide information about the interior of Spelljammer Academy, which aided in the sabotage. Micken is just sort of a helpless innocent, you know, he wanted to do well at Spelljammer Academy, was willing to, you know, kind of go to some great lengths to make that happen, and was a little bit naive, didn't think it would go this far or think that it was going to be this big of a deal. And similarly, I need to write this down as well. This is Archibald's captain was hired by the same Mercane to gather intel on SJA that Micken was. So yeah, that's another thing. At some point, maybe this session, but probably not. Maybe next session, Archibald will get to talk to his captain, who was captured after the ship crashed into Spelljammer Academy, and is currently being held prisoner by Bosun Tardo. They kind of found out what he was up to, and part of Archie's deal, because Bosun Tardo recognized some capabilities in him and said, look, we might have use for somebody with your skills. You need some training, though. And if you go through this training and prove that you're somebody that I can put at least a surface level of trust in, I will let you talk to your captain. We won't straight up execute them. And so at some point when that happens, this is pretty much when he's going to find out that the captain was hired by a Mercane. They were basically renegades. They were the type that didn't really care where they got their jobs from, where they got their money from. If it was good, they were going to do it, and they didn't really have sides, really. So getting tied up in the dealings of a Mercane, not so outlandish, not so unbelievable. So that is kind of it. I don't think I have anything left here. We have the combat, we have the role play, and we have the ship to ship combat. If they do end up boarding, then we move to the Hammerhead ship map, and we'll put tokens here. I already have them ready to go. I have the tokens on here, and I took off. If you go into the way that this page is programmed, they have programmed dynamic lighting. I just don't like it for this particular thing because this looks more like a hand-drawn map. And theoretically, nothing in here that we're going to use today will require dynamic lighting. They're not, in the middle of combat going to be trying to hide theoretically, or put people behind doors or what have you. So I don't really need dynamic lighting here. So that's why I'm turning it off for today. But it is there, if you're in case anybody watching this is wondering. But I think, and then after today's session, assuming they pass, and we do have rules for that, we do have rules, the scoring sheet for pass or fail for this particular exercise. Assuming they pass, they get a reward of 100 gold, which I assume can be spent at the Academy store, and they level up to level 2. So that's where we stand, and that's where I'm ending today's video. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time in a week, theoretically, where we prep for Session 3 of Spelljammer Academy in another episode of D&D Behind the Scenes. Thank you for watching. See you next time.